In early February 1978, New England meteorologists began to see the ingredients for a special type of snowstorm, what's known as a nor'easter. Nor'easters in New England are common, especially in the cold winter months. But it was too far out for these meteorologists to predict that this was not going to be a regular snowstorm, blizzard, or nor'easter. The atmosphere was building the storm of a generation, with its sights set on New England. These meteorologists were looking at this, a 500 millibar map of the United States. In meteorology, 500 millibar maps are great for measuring and looking at upper atmospheric winds. These maps can tell us a lot about what types of weather to expect. Looking at the 500 millibar map of the United States on February 4th, about 2 days before the storm, we can see a huge high-pressure ridge sitting over central Canada and a large low-pressure system sitting over the Great Lakes. In the case of this Great Lakes low-pressure system, cold air was flowing down from the Arctic, cooling the upper atmosphere, making it incredibly cold. The 500 millibar map does not tell the whole story. Alongside the eastern seaboard is the Atlantic Ocean, which has one very special property, a current, known as the Gulf Stream. The Gulf Stream is a strong ocean current that carries warm water from the Gulf of Mexico and Caribbean up the East Coast, which ultimately keeps the Atlantic Ocean relatively mild. And more importantly, makes the temperature at the surface of the ocean significantly warmer than that low pressure system forming over the Great Lakes, and ultimately are the key ingredients for an incredibly powerful nor'easter bearing down on New England. And meteorologists began to take notice and alert the public.
Even on the Thursday night, 4 days before the storm. Back in those days, that was incredibly unusual to feel confident about a potential snowstorm 4 days out. Very unusual.
Over the weekend of February 4th and 5th, the weather services in Boston, Providence, and Hartford issued multiple warnings about the coastal and snow impacts heading towards New England, including a winter storm warning 30 hours in advance, a heavy snow watch the Sunday before, and blizzard conditions predicted 15 hours in advance.
I thought everything pointed to a major East Coast storm.
But if this storm was well forecast days in advance, why didn't people know? Local meteorologist Harvey Leonard puts it best.
The blizzard of 78 was not widely forecast. Not everybody was aware that we were going to get a big storm. The forecasts were not uniform at all, and many really didn't quite get the magnitude of what was going to happen. So there were many people got caught.
Well forecast, but not widely forecast. And this would spell disaster for much of southern New England. The public at the time was already skeptical of meteorologists. So on the morning of February 6th, New Englanders woke up to, well, nothing.
Schools, businesses, and industry were in full operation. It wasn't snowing on the way to work, and there seemed to be a collective feeling that the forecaster had been wrong again.
But when the snow finally came, it came fast. Fortunately or unfortunately, the Massachusetts government has a system to notify major employers to send employees home in the event of severe weather. This decision by the state of Massachusetts to send employees home would be a huge reason for why this storm is remembered and revered unlike any other winter storm. In the early afternoon of February 6th, as the snow just began to fall, people began their commutes home. Some people decided to wait it out and ended up stranded. Notably, at the Beanpot Hockey Tournament in Boston, 12,000 fans entered the game with a few inches of fresh snow on the ground and came out to blizzard conditions and a shut-down city.
For one, I remember they were giving out free hot dogs at the concession stands and coffee, and so we knew it must be something special for the garden to give out free things at the concession stands.
A lot of us didn't realize how bad it was outside, and when they made an announcement that they asked people to leave and catch the tea before it closed, we knew they normally didn't want to patch up the concessions and send people home that early, so we knew it was something special.
Many attendees were forced to live in the Boston Garden for several days before returning home. But being stranded at the Boston Garden is nothing compared to those trying to commute home. The employees sent home across the state of Massachusetts and Rhode Island naturally wanted to get home before what they expected to be the worst of the storm. The major highways like Interstate 95 and 93 were quickly inundated with an early rush hour. On top of that, drivers were met with worsening blizzard conditions and snowfall rates up to 3 inches per hour. The roads quickly came to a standstill due to the whiteout conditions, leading to multiple highways turning into snow-covered parking lots that extended for miles. Many of these drivers would not return home for days due to the incredibly long nature of the storm and sheer magnitude of snow. Typical nor'easters move through the area in about 6 to 12 hours, but this storm lasted so much longer. 36 hours stalled over New England due to a high-pressure system sandwiching the low of the storm. But not only was snow a problem, but so was the sea. Between February 6th and 7th, coastal New England experienced 3 high tides, which proved disastrous and deadly. The blizzard of 78 approached New England during a new moon. During both a new moon and a full moon, oceanic tides are already higher than average due to how the moon interacts with the gravitational pull of the Earth. So the tides were already abnormally high as the storm approached. And for 3 separate high tides, each about 4 feet above normal, coastal communities were inundated with cold, winter Atlantic Ocean. On top of all of that, due to the northeasterly wind and shape of coastal Massachusetts, storm surges of 12 feet were recorded, meaning that some people were experiencing 16 feet of oceanic flooding during the worst of the blizzard. Once the storm ended, it was time to dig out New England, and the sheer magnitude of snow made it incredibly difficult.
Good morning. This is today, Tuesday, February 7th, and there is a weather emergency throughout much of the Northeast and the Atlantic seaboard.
Snow totals were significant for this storm, breaking 24-hour snowfall records in Boston and Providence, 20 inches in Worcester, 27 inches in Boston and Providence, and notably 38 inches in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, the highest official snow measurement, leading to most people digging out and having snowdrifts well above their heads. On top of that, people were stuck in flooded homes along the coast waiting for rescue, with the National Guard sending out amphibious vehicles to retrieve people. But not only was the snow and the water a problem, but the number of cars.
Even to the most casual observer, it is obvious that these vehicles can't be moved until the streets are plowed, and the streets can't be plowed until the vehicles are moved.
For miles across multiple major interstates, over 5,000 cars were abandoned across Rhode Island and Massachusetts. Not only was it difficult to move the snow, but it was an incredible feat to move all those cars. The snow even limited the federal government from being able to fly in additional supplies and tools. Following the end of the storm, it took 4 days to get federal help to the state of Rhode Island, the worst hit out of New England. It took 6 full days to get the interstates back up and running. The blizzard of 1978 goes down in the record books for not only the sheer magnitude of snow and damage, but for the decisions, both good and bad that impacted the logistics of the greater New England area. And as with any storm, there's always something to learn. First, the National Weather Service and weather forecasting offices at the time were applauded for their early detection of the storm. The Department of Commerce found that the entire National Weather Service operated in an outstanding manner, doing their best to alert the public ahead of the storm. For the first time, television as opposed to radio was used for emergency broadcasting. Governor Gary of Rhode Island ran several press conferences similar to a White House press room or any other emergency briefing to continue updating the public. In addition, Governor of Massachusetts Michael Dukakis also appeared on Boston television throughout the duration of the storm. And as weather prediction continues to improve, we'll be alerted about storms sooner and more accurately. However, it will always be up to us to heed the warning. Thank you so much for watching this video, and if you have any suggestions for weather topics to cover next, let me know in the comments below.